Hello, the world. We are They Will Kill, a true crime podcast. I'm Courtney Eck.
And I'm Sadie Eck, and we are sisters that want to tell you about lesser-known murders.
Our cases are always compelling, maybe even a little scary, with just enough banter to keep it interesting.
You can find us at theywillkill.com.
Or anywhere you listen to podcasts. See you there.
See ya!
Hello and welcome back to True Crime Guys Podcast. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Michael.
Well, we have another example of DNA saving the day.
Yes, I love these.
Early in the DNA days where law enforcement started to use it to catch killers, and I think this killer wasn't quite keen to it yet. This was right in that window, 1986, the late 80s, when DNA started being used to link killers to crimes. And also we have another example. This is a little bit like Neil Falls, this episode, where it's a guy that is purported and suspected to be a serial killer.
Right, but they had no proof.
Yeah, but there's not there's nothing linking him to these crimes, but it's suspected. So we'll go through those at the end of it.
Right.
But yeah, this is a good case.
Crazy case, man.
Yeah.
But another good, like you said, another case of DNA saving the day again. And this time period, these late 80s, early 90s, I think that's really the period, like you said, that's the period where people really weren't thinking about that shit. It really wasn't main news, but yet DNA was still being saved from every crime. Like, you gotta think, man, if you committed a crime in the late 80s, early 90s, man, you gotta be sweating bullets. It's any day now, that somebody could come knocking on your door. And people are more and more people are sending in their DNA to Ancestry and
23andMe, Ancestry.
I have family members that are telling me this shit all the time. They're like, hey, they're just sending me stuff. They're like, hey, check out my DNA. I got this back and this and that. And I'm like, damn, everybody doing this shit now.
I hope you didn't kill nobody back in the 70s or 80s.
I know. Yeah. I hope none of our cousins did or anything like that.
Right.
Don't be fucked up. We're all like, oh, at least I know how much Irish I am. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, this isn't even a genealogy one, which we've covered several of, and I'm sure we'll do many more because there's literally stuff breaking on a daily basis about this killer was linked to a crime that happened because of genealogy. That shit is breaking every day. There was actually one in Vegas recently where a killer was caught after like 20 years.
Yeah.
Hold on, we can go over that real quick. I saved it in my email.
Well, you know what comes to mind?
Local case in Las Vegas.
Yeah, and another case I thought of while you're looking that up, what comes to mind is the guy we did not that long ago who got caught by throwing the cigarette butt out, remember? And it was because all of his family has submitted their DNA, and they pretty much knew it was him. They just needed
narrowed it down to two brothers, remember?
Yeah.
And it was like they just had to follow both brothers and get some DNA, and one of them was a cigarette butt that he threw out the window, which fuck him for littering too.
Yeah.
I don't know how smokers think it's like not littering to throw your cigarette butts out. It's still fucking paper and foam. It's like, I guess birds are using it for the nest and getting cancer and shit. Like, that's not cool, bro.
Yeah, that filter is never going away. It's like fucking plastic and foam and styrofoam. I don't know what the hell.
Yeah, that is not biodegradable.
No, that cigarette filter's
it's all filled with deadly chemicals and shit too.
Like you say, birds are just putting it in their nest.
Yeah, the baby bird in the nest is just coughing and shit.
Shoot, birds are probably feeding their babies that shit. Birds are dumb, man. They scoop that shit up and barf it out into their baby's throat.
Come on, I'm trying to get this article to pull up on my crappy internet.
Think about that next time you guys throwing cigarette butts out. You're choking birds.
Right. 1979 cold case, solved using through semen analysis, and this is a local Las Vegas case.
Okay.
Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department has identified the suspect in the murder of Kim Bryant, a 16-year-old girl who went missing in January of 1979 and was found dead almost a month later using forensic-grade genome sequencing, Othram Inc., a Texas-based forensic sequencing. So there's all these new laboratories that's what they do. They specialize in now is they just link. They get these big trees of DNA going, and they start linking crimes and
wouldn't that be fun,
go down
though?
the family tree until they get to a suspect.
God, that sounds like a blast to me. Like, to be able to look into that and be like, oh, okay, so they match these genes. Okay, so these two must be brothers.
This is going to be TV shows. I can see TV shows in the making of this. These labs, like, just follow these labs around as they solve these cases.
Well, think about how much lab work is already a part of crime shows. You think CSI, think of shows like Bones. Like, did you ever watch Bones? I
Yeah.
mean, 90% of that show was in the lab, like comparing just this.
Well, think
evidence, trace
about
evidence.
even CSI back in the day. A lot of it was
Yeah.
in the lab.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So in January of 1979, Bryant was reported missing after she did not return home from school. She was last seen at a fast food restaurant on Decatur near 95, which we know that area well.
North Vegas.
In February of 1979, her deceased body was discovered in a desert area near West Charleston and South Buffalo, which in 1979, I'm guessing that was still desert out there, but it's been developed for years and years now.
Oh yeah, that's a nice neighborhood out there now. But yeah, it's that was just probably just straight 2-lane roads cutting through the desert at that time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So detectives believe she was abducted the day she went missing and sexually assaulted, and testing done was made possible thanks to a donation from a Vegas resident named Justin Wu, who approached the Las Vegas Police Department to help further with a cold case investigation. So he donated. That funded the DNA research to find this killer.
Wow.
Who turned out to be, who was the killer's name?
Did he have any priors? Do you know? Was this guy like?
Yeah, so it was a guy named Johnny Peterson who was 19 years old at the time, and this was 1979. So it doesn't say how old he is now, but he's obviously a much older man. But
Yeah.
like you said, you can't rest easy anymore if you killed somebody back in the day. It's bad enough that your DNA could get directly linked if you get arrested and your DNA's taken, but now that doesn't even need to happen. That's what happens in our case this week.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the guy's arrested for an unrelated crime, his DNA's taken and it's linked to him. But now, like, that doesn't even have to happen. Your fucking uncle or your niece or somebody can upload their DNA and they start tracing it and say, hey, this killer's DNA is awfully close to this person. And next thing you know, you're getting a knock at your door.
And especially if they can put you in the area of the crime.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, if they have a similar match DNA and they can put you in that area and you
This
have
guy
priors.
was 19. He lived in Vegas at the time. And yep.
Yeah,
This
you're
matches.
fucked. That's good, though. I'm glad people are sweating, bro. I'm glad people are sweating that shit out. Hopefully that's a real deterrent for people in the future. You know, I'm sure people will just evolve and get smarter, but for now, we're in a time where it's damn hard to get away with a crime, which is great, especially a crime as brutal as a rape and a murder.
Yeah. All right, should we get into this case?
I think we should, bro. I think we teased it enough.
Let's do it. The case of Lil Miss Murder.
All right.
She could be anywhere by now, anywhere by now. I saw her downtown. She could be anywhere by now, north of the border now, a Canadian town. She could be anywhere by now, anywhere by now. I saw her downtown. Everybody turn here, look at this. Have you seen her? Her license plate reads Little Miss. Can you be sure? Black CRX, high on MPG, not reefer. Not reefer, her first time going alone. You know how it goes, she's 500 miles from home. Walking on the road, a man that she didn't know. And he took her home, He took her home, yeah. Everybody here, look at this. Have you seen her? A license plate reads Little Miss. Can you be sure? Black CRX, high on MPG. High on MPG, not reefer. She could be anywhere by now, anywhere by now. I saw her downtown. She could be anywhere by now, north of the border now, a Canadian town.
All right, for our case this week, we are doing the Lil Miss Murder, and you'll find out soon why it's called that. But this involves a victim named Lisa Kimmel. Lisa Kimmel was born July 18th, 1969 in Covington, Tennessee. She shares a birthday with the great Vin Diesel.
Wow.
Live my life 1/4 mile at a time.
Yeah, Vin Diesel. Who else?
Oh man, he's starting to look weird as he gets older. I'm not gonna lie. Like in the what is it, Fast 76 or whatever, whichever one they're on now. They've just got so much makeup caked onto him that he's just like, I don't know.
Well, they're trying to make
They can't accept that he's getting old. They're trying to make him still look like he did in the first one, and I don't know.
Well, maybe they shouldn't wait so long in between the movies. I mean, damn, the scripts ain't that complicated. I mean,
Yeah.
what do you get on here? You race some cars. You know, you have a little shootout. How hard is this?
I feel like he's getting to that stage that old men get to, where like their nose and their ears keep growing, but the rest of them is like shrinking.
Oh yeah,
Like his nose and his ears get bigger each Fast and the Furious.
you know, and your bone structure too. Your bone structure changes as you get older. It really does.
Yeah.
Different things.
You start to contract,
Yeah, different features
like
of your
curl
face
in like
become,
an old prune.
Well, yeah, some features, and then on the other hand, other features become more prominent. You know what I'm saying? It's weird. It really is weird to see pictures of someone like in their 30s and 40s and then see them at like 70, 80. You're like, whoa, it's crazy.
Right.
It's crazy the differences that your body goes under.
Father Time's a motherfucker. Also, Kristen Bell and Canelo Alvarez, two people that are aging quite well.
Yes. Kristen Bell, hilarious. Probably my wife's favorite actress.
Really?
Rather. Kristen Bell, yeah.
I never took her as so funny. What's she in that's so funny? I'm like, what am I missing here?
Kristen Bell, right? From like The Good Place?
The only thing I really know her from is like Forgetting Sarah Marshall. That's the main thing I know her
okay.
from.
So yeah, no, she's done a lot of things where she starred in like sitcoms and stuff. One of my favorites is The Good Place. You ever watch that?
Nope.
Okay. It's a like a ongoing comedy sitcom type thing where she ends up going to heaven, right?
Oh.
But it's by mistake. She was actually a really shitty person on Earth.
That's a funny concept.
Yeah, you have to check. I don't want to ruin it for you. I don't want to say too much because it's hard to say a lot without ruining it. But
All right.
it's a funny show. She really shines in
All right,
that show,
so-
rather.
All right, so people check that out. Back to Lisa Kimmel, who was born in 1969. She was the eldest of three daughters born to Sheila and Ronald Kimmel. She was raised in Billings, Montana, and upon graduating from Billings senior year high school in 1987, the year that I was born, she took a job managing an Arby's in Aurora, Colorado. So she's born and raised in Montana.
Yeah.
Gets this job you might be wondering how she gets a job managing an Arby's in Colorado. How does that happen?
Well, she was born in Tennessee, which is crazy. I wonder how long she spent in Tennessee.
that's right, yeah.
And then she raised in Montana. Man, that's a hell of a jump.
I was gonna say I get the feeling she wasn't in Tennessee for very long.
Apparently
she
not.
She moved as basically a baby to Billings.
Looks like it.
But yeah, so how does a girl go from graduating high school in Billings, Montana to managing an Arby's in Aurora, Colorado? It's because her mother, Sheila, was a regional manager of Arby's, and the two worked in the Denver area together and would commute back to Billings every weekend, which is quite a drive. That just sounds exhausting. You work all week in Colorado, and then you drive 555 miles back to Billings, Montana for the weekend.
That's an 8-hour drive, right?
8 hours.
Approximately. That's a
every
whole
weekend.
work day. So you drive a whole other work day
Yeah.
after your week. Nah, I couldn't
And you'd
do
think
that.
just after that drive, you'd just be exhausted, and that's the day right there. You're done for the
To
day.
work it-
There goes one of your days of the weekend.
Right? Who even goes to Arby's? I would not drive 8 hours. No, I'm just kidding.
I used to eat some Arby's.
I know.
Every day.
Arby's?
Every day on my lunch break, I ate Arby's when I first started at my job. Like literally every day, the same Arby's.
I have to admit,
Actually, close to where the murder we talked about at the beginning of the episode,
Yep.
Decatur and Alta.
Yep.
I used to eat at that Arby's every single day for my lunch break.
damn, you eat a lot of roast beef.
Yeah, I don't think that Arby's is even there anymore.
I have to say though, Arby's seems like they're making a comeback. At least Arby's in my town. Like I see them now, and like the other day I rode by it around dinner time. That Arby's was out into the damn street.
No shit.
I was like, okay, Arby's, I see you out here. Because like if you drive by in the morning, lunchtime, it's like it seems empty. But at least compared to other restaurants, it's not a favorite here in the South, I guess I'd say. But it seems to be still gaining traction. They're still here.
I feel like in the 90s, it was a well respected establishment, Arby's.
I agree.
Not so
Dude.
much anymore. It's lost its luster.
Yeah.
But like, it was like, oh, you're going out to Arby's. It was like higher class than McDonald's and shit like that.
Bro, I remember like we would be like on our way home from somewhere and my dad would stop and get us all like beef and cheddars, just get like a whole bag of just beef and cheddars. And it was like, yeah, dinner.
Right.
Like that was luxury, good times, man. Good times.
Yeah. The 90s.
Right?
So yeah, during the week, Lisa and her mother, they lived and worked in Colorado, the Denver area. Aurora's like an area that's not technically part of Denver, but it's like a part of the metropolitan. It's like, I guess, Henderson
Still a
is
big
to Las
city.
Vegas.
Yeah.
Yeah. But during the week, they resided in an apartment complex in Denver, each in their own separate apartment, and would regularly return to Billings. Like I said, most weekends they would drive together back to Billings, Montana, where Lisa's father, Ronald, and her younger siblings resided. And this leads us up to this infamous trip in which Lisa would go missing and ultimately be found murdered. So on March 25th, 1988, 18-year-old Lisa left Aurora and headed for Billings as usual, but she'd be stopping in Cody, Wyoming, which was between Colorado and Billings, Montana, to pick up her boyfriend, Ed Jarek.
Okay.
So this trip was a bit different. She didn't go with her mother on this trip, and on this trip she planned to pick up her boyfriend who hadn't met her family yet.
Right.
So this is kind of like a big weekend. She was going to be bringing Ed home to meet her father and siblings. I think Ed may have met her mother probably on the drive.
Yeah.
That they did every weekend. They'd probably stop and hang out with Ed for a little bit.
Probably.
But he had not met her father and siblings yet.
Oh, okay.
And on this trip, her mother would not be accompanying her. Her mother actually flew home to Billings the day earlier because she had a ski trip planned. So she needed to, get back to Montana quickly.
Right.
Now, on this drive, Lisa would be driving a black 1988 Honda CRX with a vanity license plate that read Lil Miss.
Underrated
which is why
cars.
they call this the Lil Miss.
Oh.
Yeah, and it was brand new at the time. You got to think,
Yeah.
this is 1988. She's
Dude.
making this drive, so she had just gotten this vehicle.
I have this theory that like fuel companies wanted that car off the fucking road because at that peak
it
right
so
there,
efficient?
dude, 48 miles to the gallon. Imagine.
No way.
Yes.
What?
Dude, my cousin had a CRX, had a late 80s CRX in like 2005, 2006. I swear to God, that thing was better than an electric car almost. I mean, he would get like nearly 50 miles to the gallon depending on how he drove. And it was a straight drive because they're so light, dude. They're so light and so efficient. I mean,
So she's probably making this drive 555 miles for a few bucks.
a few bucks,
when
man.
you think about how cheap gas was at the
Exactly,
time,
gas
plus getting
plus-
48 miles to the gallon.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It was better. It was almost better than driving a motorcycle, man. That's better than some Harleys. God dang.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why it's shaped so weird, I guess. It was like all the aerodynamics and it was light.
And that's why those cars ain't on the road no more, too. I guarantee it.
It was kind of shaped like the way the Priuses are now. It had that
Yep.
really flat back end of it.
But more aerodynamic than a Prius, in my
like a
opinion.
fish with no tail
Yeah.
or fin, I guess.
Yeah, the oil companies did not like this car, bro. They did not like it. I guarantee you.
Yeah, just like the hydro car guy that got killed by Big Oil.
Yeah.
You know,
Suspicious.
the guy that made the car that could run on water and he just all of a sudden got killed.
Yeah. Suspicious.
Got suicided. Mm-hmm. We should do an episode on that someday and then we'll get fucking whacked.
Yeah.
I guess we'll just not get any more true crime guys as soon as we do that episode.
Right. We'll make that our last episode. We'll go out with a bang, literally.
Yeah. So she Lisa takes off on this drive on March 25th, 1988. And as I mentioned, her mother had flown back to Billings the day earlier, and she was heading straight to Cody to pick up her boyfriend, which would take about 7.5 hours. And here's a quote from her then boyfriend, Ed Jarek. Quote, "The plan was that she was supposed to leave Denver and get to Cody to see me sometime late that evening. I talked to her at about 4:30, and she thought she'd be there. She'd be in at about midnight or something like that. So I'm guessing she gets off work and she's heading just going to redline it, head straight for Cody, Montana, and pick up Ed Jarek. And she would be getting there in the middle of the night. Weather conditions were good. So Lisa shouldn't have had any trouble making the trip to Cody. She had a brand new, reliable vehicle that gets great gas mileage.
Yep.
So she was expected to be at her boyfriend's late Friday night, but by Saturday morning she had not arrived, and this greatly concerned Ed, who began to call the police. This is a very concerned boyfriend who wasted no time. He immediately in that Saturday morning called Montana police, Wyoming police, and Colorado police, all three states that she'd be traveling to and through.
Right.
On her trip. And according to those police jurisdictions, there had been no accidents reported involving a car like Lisa's. So what is going on?
Right.
I'm sure he was relieved in one sense, but then also like, well, this is still a problem.
Right.
Like,
Where is she?
Yeah.
It's not like her.
So Ed then called Lisa's family, who also greatly concerned would end up driving the route she had taken in reverse. So they would drive from Montana, south towards Colorado, the same highway that she would be taking.
Yep.
And they found no sign of her as well. They didn't see her car on the side of the road. They didn't see anything. And that's when her family officially reported her missing. So after hearing of the reports, these 3 states were getting reports of this woman being missing and driving the route through their state. Patrolman Alan Lesko of the Wyoming Highway Patrol reported that he had stopped Lisa for speeding in Douglas, Wyoming, the night that she had disappeared. So that Friday night, he had pulled her over. She'd been speeding. Douglas, Wyoming, is about the midway point between Aurora and Colorado. Aurora and Cody,
right.
Wyoming, where she was headed to see her boyfriend. So,
okay.
So Alan Lesko, the officer that pulled her over, says, quote, "I was patrolling southbound on March 25th, and I noted a small car northbound at 88 miles per hour. Where we're going, we don't need roads."
She was getting it.
Now, this was a 65-mile-an-hour zone, and he says, according to my radar, I turned around and pursued the car. I stopped her near Orange Junction. She was well-kept, the kind of person you'd like to have for a daughter. And I guess it's Wyoming policy that when you pull over someone for speeding and cite them in Wyoming that's out of stater, like they're not local,
right?
They have to put down a bond on their ticket, because obviously a lot of people would just
get
the
dip
ticket
out
and never come back to Wyoming.
Right.
So it's standard practice to have to pay a bond for the police to let you go on your way. And she didn't have the money on her to pay the bond, so he actually followed her to an ATM. But she found the machine incompatible with her debit card.
I saw this, I looked this up because I was like, man, they had debit cards in 1988, but debit cards were actually introduced in 1978. But
holy crap!
Yeah, but they were
probably resisted by the public. Huh? They were like, "I'm not doing that. That's not real money."
Yes.
Let me write my check
right
at the grocery store.
Only the really wealthy had debit cards in 1978. But 10 years after, I would think that they would become more common
practice,
but not so common that every gas station would have a machine compatible with your debit card. So that does make sense. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you got to think debit cards are only out for 10 years. The chances.
Well, even now, if you use an ATM that's not your bank, you still have to pay the fucking fee, like $3 or $3.50.
Yeah,
I know, right?
I know, but at least it's compatible with your card.
Yeah.
But see, like that kind of because I thought that odd. I'm like, what? Why would an ATM not be compatible with their card? But then I was like, well, when did this take place? Oh, 88. Wow, they had debit cards. So yeah, it makes sense. Debit cards were still fairly new, especially to the general public. Mm-hmm. So
it's kind of like Bitcoin now. Like people are still resisting. It's like, it's not real. I can't feel it, touch it. And it's like, but everything you do is digital now. It's just numbers on a screen. And you use a plastic card to pay for things. Like, it's not that far off.
Right. Somebody gives you some money and your PayPal balance goes from 0 to whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
and even paper money right now is not backed by gold. It's all a sham. Like it's just an understanding of what its value is. And people agree on that. But anyways, I don't want to go down that road.
Nope.
So the officer follows her to the ATM, but her card is not compatible with the ATM. So the officer gives her a break and agrees to allow Kimmel to mail a check to the police department to pay the fine when she returned to Billings. So kind of like they get a verbal agreement, but it's
right. They feel good about
she's
it.
like, I promise I'll send a check.
Right.
And this would end up being the last confirmed sighting of Lisa Kimmel. Though there was one unconfirmed sighting of her inside of a Casper grocery store at approximately 10 p.m. that night. There would end up being a ton of sightings of her following what was believed to be, when she was killed, which is one of the things that's interesting about this case is all the sightings of her vehicle in all these different areas. And it's a very distinct vehicle, a black CRX with a license plate Lil Miss, very distinct.
Yeah.
And there's all these like credible reports from people who were like in law enforcement and stuff of her vehicle, and believed, it's believed that she was seen following when she was killed. But we'll get to that.
I know. That's what makes me. At first, I thought, well, the CRX was probably a popular car, for that time period. It's probably, and then black is a popular color, right? It's a sporty car. It's a sporty 2-door.
But that license plate.
But with that license plate, so you're saying everybody that confirmed sighting saw the license plate as well?
A Montana license plate that read Lil Miss.
Okay, well, somebody was driving her car
but
around.
We'll get into that.
Yeah,
we'll get into that in a minute. So Lisa's signature on the ticket and actually this is another thing that blew my mind. You talked about the debit card and like, oh, that was around then. Mm-hmm. There was officers actually audio recording their interactions and their when they would pull people over.
Yeah. So instead
which
of wearing
is crazy.
body
In
cams,
1988, this officer, you can actually hear the last recorded audio of Lisa Kimmel was the officer was recording as he talked to her.
Wow.
While he was citing her, and her family confirmed that it was her, in fact, in the audio recording. So they have, the police officer had her signature and the audio to confirm that he had in fact pulled her over.
Wow. So they were wearing recorders instead of body cams at the time.
I imagine maybe he took it upon himself to have his own little audio recorder,
Right.
just for his own protection or whatever.
That's smart.
Yeah. So as the week went on, with no word from her daughter, Lisa's mother began to worry, and Lisa's mother's actually written a book about her mother's murder. I believe it's called The Murder of Lil Miss. I was going to get it, but it's not available in audio form, and I didn't have time to have the book shipped to me and read it in time for this case.
Right.
But I have looked into a lot of stuff that her mother talked about in this through people that have read it. So some of that is in this
Okay.
as well.
Right on.
Yeah, so we have a couple quotes from her mother and her outlook at the time. She says, quote, "The outlook was looking grim, but even if the outcome wasn't as we hoped, we still needed to find her."
Absolutely.
And the search for Lisa became frantic, with family members anxiously joining police efforts in hopes of locating Lisa. And on April 2nd, 1 week after Lisa disappeared, their biggest fears became confirmed as a local mechanic named Greg Bradford was spending his Saturday fishing on the North Platte River.
Oh, no.
And ended up bringing the search for Lisa to a sad end. He says, quote, "When I stepped off the side of the bank, I looked over my shoulder and I saw a lady in the water. Then I remembered when we were driving up from Cheyenne, they said this young girl was missing from Montana. So I looked again and I said, oh, God, it must be her." So he had, in fact, found the nude, battered body of Lisa in that river.
Yep. Anytime you hear somebody is near a river in a true crime episode, they're about to find a body.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Someone's waiting around
every
fishing,
time.
fly fishing usually.
So a guy was fishing. Oh, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
This one's no different.
So police searched the area where Lisa's body was discovered, and on an old highway bridge 1/4 of a mile away, they found blood that was the same type of Lisa's.
Oh, on the bridge above the water.
Yeah, so a quarter mile away. So you have to imagine the body was dumped from the bridge and drifted a quarter mile before getting caught along the banks.
Or she was attacked on the bridge.
Yeah,
Right?
for sure.
Or both, rather.
Well, like I said, attacked and dropped from the bridge.
Right.
So, and this was not a commonly used bridge as well. This is clearly a bridge that was picked by the perpetrator for the means of being able to drop a body off without being seen.
Yes, obviously. This reminds me of the bridge of the what was the furniture store people murder, the Zulo murder? They weren't
the Zulo
furniture
murder.
store. What were they? I can't remember what
They were kitchen remodeling or something.
kitchen remodeling, yeah. The bridge that he was on, remember, and he was he threw the bag over the side of the
Yeah, it got
the
stuck on a
vacant
piece
bridge.
of ice. Yeah, that dipshit.
Yep. Oh well.
Yeah, so because this bridge was so inaccessible and seldom used, police theorized that the murderer may have lived in the area, been local to the area, and most people that travel through wouldn't have even known that bridge was there. It sounds like.
Probably not.
And also, based on eyewitness accounts of unexplained activity on the bridge, they estimated that Lisa was murdered early Saturday morning, roughly 5 hours after she was stopped for speeding. However, the autopsy would tell a different story. And this is just more muddling of the investigation by, so-called witnesses that someone claimed that they had seen strange activity on that bridge, which is odd because this bridge sounds like it was so desolate and rarely used. It. Like, who was watching this bridge in the middle of the night to have seen this car dumping something off of it? It's weird. And also when you think about what the autopsy tells, completely different story of her not being killed that night, her being killed 6 days later. So the reports, you really have to question whether someone actually saw, strange activity. Maybe they saw someone else on that bridge doing something different, but it was unrelated to Lisa's murder. I don't know.
Right.
Or maybe they were just trying to interject himself for some reason. Or maybe it was the killer himself interjecting inaccurate information to try and make the investigation harder. Who knows?
Yeah, at this point, it could have been anybody.
Yeah. So Lisa Kimmel's mother, Sheila, described in her book, The Murder of Lil Miss, what it's like to receive the news that Lisa had been found. She says, quote, 8 days after her disappearance, our worst nightmare materialized. 2 fishermen found Lisa's body early Saturday afternoon, April 2nd, 1988. She hadn't had a wreck. Her body had been dropped from the old government bridge near Casper, Wyoming, into the old North Platte River. Our beautiful daughter was gone. Awful.
Well, at least, I mean, it's tough, but at least they had closure. And I feel like they were somewhat prepared for this.
Yeah.
When they found out that she didn't arrive at her boyfriend's, she was pulled over, so she'd been cited, and then not hearing from her since, I think they were already starting to prepare their minds for this. But
Yeah.
still, not an easy task for any parent.
Especially with the character of their daughter. They know that she wouldn't have just ran off for no reason.
Right.
Yeah. So, coroner James Thorpin, who examined Lisa's body, determined that the young woman had been hit over the head and repeatedly stabbed, at least 7 times in the abdomen. The autopsy determined that she had been bound, beaten, and raped, and was estimated that this had gone on for some time, up to around 6 days. The coroner estimated that she'd been held captive and been being basically tortured and repeatedly raped. Blood matching Lisa's body found at the old government bridge led police to believe that she'd either been killed there or close to the location before being dumped into the river. So putting things together, it sounds like she was being held at some location and then was actually killed at or near the bridge due to the blood that was found on the bridge. So potentially brought to the bridge, stabbed and beaten, and then thrown off the bridge at that site.
Killed and thrown off at that site, but kept somewhere for at least 6 days?
Yes. Yeah.
Whoa. Yeah, definitely serial killer tendencies right here. This is definitely not someone's first offense.
No. So not long after Kimmel's remains were found, Unsolved Mysteries aired a segment on Lisa's murder, and the program featured 2 prominent individuals that claimed they saw Kimmel's car on the streets in the hours and days following her death. One was a woman named Donna Kirkpatrick, who was married to a local county sheriff. And these are these credible reports that we talked about earlier of her car being seen driven around by a woman in the days following her death or her abduction. Donna states, it was Saturday at noon, and I noticed a little black sports car had pulled right in front of me. Then I noticed the license plate. It was a Montana license plate with Lil Miss on it.
Kind of hard to miss.
And at that point, I decided I needed to see if the car went with whoever was driving it. I'm absolutely positive there was a young gal driving it. There's no doubt in my mind.
This is so innocent, and so like we all do this shit, right? When you see a vanity plate, you're like, let me see who's driving this car.
Right? Does it match up with
right?
The license? Is this a Little Miss or is this some like old guy?
Right. Exactly. You're curious. You're like, who is this person who thinks this much of this part of their personality that they want to put it on their tag? Like they want to pay the extra $80 as a registration. Let me see. Who is this? Oh, okay. So I totally believe this report, 100%. And her husband was a police officer too, so she's used to hearing these types of details.
Right. When you think about it, I think I would prefer my daughter to have a vanity license plate. If my daughter was driving around on desolate highways in 1988, where she doesn't have a cell phone and GPS and everything else like that, you're going on a drive with no communication. I'd like her to have something really tying her, noticeable, like a license plate like that. Like that actually comes in handy, clearly, in this case.
I guess
it also muddles things a lot, because then you get all these reports that who knows where they came from, and a lot of them can't be true. They just, when you think about what actually happened, it can't all be true. Can't be real. Yeah, like her car being driven by a woman in Canada just doesn't make any sense when we know where the car ends up ultimately. We find that out later on.
Yeah, it just don't make sense. But people, like I said, a lot of people probably saw black CRXs with a young woman driving them, and which makes sense. I mean, a small compact sports car, that's a perfect car for a young teenage girl. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, most people aren't paying attention to those small details, or maybe they're not even close enough to the car to see the tag. And then Montana may be a state, I don't know, but it may be a state where they only put the tag on the back of the car, which just causes more problems. Like North Carolina's like that. Like, we don't have 2 tags here. You just get 1 tag, you put it on the back of your car, you put whatever the fuck you want on the front.
Nevada too. Yeah, Nevada, you don't have to have one on the front. It's optional.
But they give you 2 tags though. Still, a lot of drivers will put both tags on because they're like, well, what the hell? I got both tags. But like a lot of states, I'm guessing, or at least, North Carolina, they don't only give you 1 tag. So if you're not behind somebody, you're not even going to know. You're not going to be able to identify it.
Right. So officers received numerous other tips, all alleging that they had seen Lisa, or at least someone who looked like her, driving a vehicle matching her car's description post-mortem. None of the tipsters said that Lisa seemed distressed when they saw her. They saw this young blonde girl driving this car, and she seemed totally normal, not distressed. And there was also a bunch of sightings of her car being driven by men as well, and there was a bunch of police sketches done. Like, this is insane how many reports they got of this car being driven around. Sightings that even extended into Canada. So here's a quote from an officer that had been working it. He says, quote, "We had over 1,000 sightings of this vehicle, a lot of them from law enforcement officers, and we were deluged with them to the point where we thought they had gone to Canada. We had
That's
seen
crazy.
we had some sightings in Canada. Like, what in the world?
How?
I know.
Like, I need to know that these officers confirmed the tag. I mean,
Is it possible, knowing what we know
It's
now at the
possible.
end? I mean, we know where the car ends up. We know who, ultimately the perpetrator gets caught. We know the car ends up
Right.
being found buried on his property and things like that. But is it possible that he held her captive and was driving her car around looking for other victims as well? Is that possible? I think it's possible.
absolutely, it's possible.
Before ultimately burying
Or-
it later, because we know he didn't have a car at the time. That's why, or I think he did have a truck. But is it possible that he was driving her car around, trying to pick up other girls, or who knows? I mean, I think it's possible.
Absolutely.
Or
dude.
that he had let. I think there was a like a nephew that was on the property with him. Maybe he was letting the nephew drive the car around.
Right. Well, also
Meanwhile, having
Montana.
Lisa,
know-
held captive on his property.
Montana is, I mean, it's on the border of Canada. I mean, it's not that much of
Yeah.
a stretch. Or maybe he had a girlfriend or something. He was like, yeah, just take her car, Like, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Drive her car around. I mean, you look like her. You have blonde hair. Most people, it's just worst case scenario, it confuses everybody. Or you get pulled over. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
not crazy to think that they were in Montana and they went to Canada. That's not out of the question. I mean, they're already driving 7, 8 hour trips everywhere. And then you get a car that gets almost 50 miles to the gallon. Shit, it ain't
Right.
even expensive for the damn serial killer to go drive around in this thing. He's like, fuck my truck. I'm taking this.
And this guy had a vibe of, not really. He had like I don't give a shit attitude about getting caught. Like he
probably,
so I could almost see him being brash enough to
yeah, he was jaded.
either lend the car out to someone or drive it around himself. Like he just didn't give it a shit. I mean, the guy was living, we'll come to find out, in a bus with no electricity or running water or anything on this desolate property in a town with no one in it in the middle of Montana. So
Yeah.
I don't know. He didn't have much to lose,
No. And also, Lauren, like we talked about, who knows how long he's been doing this, man?
Yeah,
Who knows
exactly.
how long this is just normal routine for him? Just another girl, another car, whatever. I'll dispose of it and everything will be all hunky dory. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, you know how these serial killers get? They get lazy, they get nonchalant because they feel like, I'm not getting
Get
caught.
cocky.
Yeah. And somebody who keeping somebody for 6 days, that's pretty fucking cocky.
Yep. So getting all these reports, police would have the witnesses work with sketch artists and created 17 different sketches of the men supposedly driving Lisa's car.
Oh my God.
Unfortunately, they all looked different, which only muddied the investigation further, and they couldn't even release like a photo to the public because it's like we have 17 different looking
Right.
sketches. Like which one do we pick,
I was about to say, that just sounds like a bad idea coming from the start. Let's get 17 different sketches from 17 different people. No, this doesn't
Right.
sound like a way to narrow this down at all.
No. He's a dude, he had hair, might be a chick, we don't know. Like
He looking like a man.
yeah. He had hair, nose, and then like eyes and stuff.
Right. Maybe a mustache. I don't really know.
Yeah. Maybe not. Keep your eye out, guys.
Right. We'll find him.
Yeah. So we know Lisa was last seen at 9 p.m. on Friday when she was, pulled over by the police officer and given the ticket, and was reported missing by 9 a.m. Saturday morning. Yet she was reportedly seen twice later that day and once on Sunday. If Lisa was, if she was alive, what's going on here? Why hadn't she showed up at her boyfriend's? Why was she just driving around aimlessly?
Right.
And if she'd been killed early Saturday morning, as police, suspected initially because of the reports of the bridge activity and stuff like that, which the coroner, as we mentioned, would tell the real story, and that she was held captive for 6 days. So who was driving Lisa's car? This is all things the police were wondering at the time. Ultimately, none of these reports would amount to much. All the reports of her being seen driving around, or her car being driven around by men, they would ultimately be impossible to prove what was going on with that.
They're
and
too
they've never
mixed
been
up.
fully explained.
Yeah, they're too mixed up and no way to confirm these reports. And how many of these reports were just thrown in by, like you said maybe by the killer himself, maybe by associates of him, just trying to throw things off.
Yeah.
It's just when you have this many reports, it's almost worse than just having a few because you don't know where to start.
And meanwhile, an FBI profiler named Ron Walker would give his thoughts on who police should be looking for. He said it would be it was most likely a white man in his mid-20s or older, a loner that probably lived in the Casper area. And on March 28th, 1989, around a year after Lisa's remains were laid to rest, a family friend discovered a mysterious note taped to Lisa's headstone that read, quote, "Lisa, There aren't words to say how much you're missed. The pain never leaves. It's so hard without you. Always be alive. In me, your death is my painful loss, but heaven's sweet gain. Love always. Stringfellow Hawk. And I read it as it was written. There was several misspellings. There was no periods used. It was a distinct way of writing for someone who's maybe not highly educated.
Right.
And the Stringfellow Hawk is actually a character from a short-lived television series called Airwolf. And this series was about a withdrawn and soulful pilot who lives in a remote cabin and uses a secret military helicopter to search for his missing brother. So about this lonely character living in a cabin alone. And Lisa's parents would allegedly watch the show, and a certain episode of this show caught their attention. There was an episode in which Stringfellow Hawk's girlfriend lives with him for 6 days in the cabin. During the 6 days, they have sex, and he feeds her. And on the 6th day, she's killed by the bad guys. So very similar to the end, unfortunately, of Lisa's life.
Yes, it is. The 6
I guess
days, that's eerie.
Yes, and ultimately being killed. Unfortunately, detectives had no suspects to attempt to match the handwriting from the letter to until later on, and the case would remain cold. It's also interesting, worth noting that the letter was dated 11/13/1988, which police knew that letter had not been there since November. This letter was found on the headstone in March, and police had visited, not police, but like family members and friends had visited her headstone between November and March, and there's no way that it was there. So It may have been written in November, but it wasn't placed on the headstone until closer to, somewhere in March.
Okay.
So it may have also been the killer trying to mislead people once again.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe he wrote that letter then, and then just
perhaps.
Posted it on the headstone later.
Yeah. But there's a lot more coming, and we're going to find out who this sick fucker is and discuss whether we believe he's a serial killer or not after a quick commercial break.
Right on.
Some days can be a real struggle. The good news is, I'm having a lot less of those since I found True Niagen. I actually love it. True Niagen helps fuel the cell's energy engines, maintains cellular metabolism, and even supports heart health in combination with a healthy lifestyle. With 13 published human clinical studies and backed by Nobel Prize winners, True Niagen is a supplement that's clinically proven to boost NAD levels, an essential coenzyme required for cellular energy and repair. Since taking True Niagen, I have more resiliency, and it helps my muscles recover. I just have more zest for life. Add more vitality to your life today with True Niagen. Right now, new customers can save 10% on their first purchase by going to TrueNiagen.com/creeper and use code CREEPER. That's TrueNiagen.com/creeper, code CREEPER, to save 10% on your first purchase. TrueNiagen.com/creeper, code, you guessed it, CREEPER. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. As true crime fans, you guys already know life is often stranger than fiction. I think that's why we're drawn to true crime. There are shocking, real-life stories that Hollywood can't even make up. That's what I love most about true crime, studying the extremes of humanity and what motivates them. Get your fill of suspense and scandal, from small-town whodunits to heart-pounding series with deadly cults, infamous serial killers, and cold cases rekindled. Sundance Now understands your obsession. Sundance Now has a gripping selection of true crime series you won't find anywhere else. It's a commercial-free streaming service brought to you by the people at AMC Network. So if you're a fan of their groundbreaking storytelling, then you'll love Sundance Now. For example, No One Saw a Thing examines the unsolved mysterious death of a small-town bully in Missouri. Some of you may remember from our True Crime Guys episode on Ken Rex McElroy, who was murdered in front of 60 townspeople back in 1981. The kicker? Nobody'll fess up. It's considered one of the most infamous acts of vigilante justice in American history. And I love rounding out the night with a good true crime series, like Who Took Johnny, which explores the infamous case of Johnny Gosch, which you guys know I'm obsessed with. You can stream Sundance Now on all your favorite devices. Just download the app or watch online. Sundance Now is available for as low as $4.99 a month. Discover your next binge-worthy show on Sundance Now. Try Sundance Now free for 30 days by going to sundancenow.com with my promo code CREEPER. That's sundancenow.com, code CREEPER, to get your first 30 days for free.
All right, we're back. Thank you to our lovely sponsors. Check out the links to this week's ads in the description of the episode.
That's right.
As well as the sources for what we used to study for this case and any other pertinent information, our Patreon link, all that stuff. We'll talk more about that later.
Right.
So in 2000, 12 years after Lisa's murder, cold case detectives reopened her case. They had some semen samples from the rape kit and from Lisa's underwear that were sent off to a crime lab. And unfortunately, initially, no match would be found.
Right.
And it would take another 2 years before finally they would get some closure in this case. In July of 2002, 2 years after they had sent off the semen, detectives get a call. And after 14 years, the case had finally been solved. The
Wow.
DNA had been linked to a perpetrator, and it would be discovered to be 57-year-old Dale Wayne Eaton of Moneta, Wyoming. And Moneta it's not even notable. That's how small this town is. It's right off the highway. It looks like, from Google Maps, it looks like one property. I don't know what the population is. When you look at their Wikipedia page, the most notable thing is Dale Wayne Eaton. That's how small this town is.
Oh, no. That sucks.
However, Moneta is right. It was right in Lisa's path between Casper and Cody. So she drove right through there. And we'll talk more, but it is believed that Dale Wayne Eaton may be the Great Basin serial killer. There's several other unsolved murders that occurred in these areas that fit the mold of this guy. And clearly his behavior was habitual. It's not something you just do once. Hold a woman captive for 6 days and murder her and bury her car and all this shit.
Just his MO in this case alone would lead you to believe that he's killed other people. I mean, that's, I'd bet anything on that.
Yeah, and his upbringing fits the mold of a serial killer as well.
No doubt. And stealing things young, being that violent young, stabbing someone as a child, which we'll get into.
Yeah, so Dale Wayne Eaton was born in 1945. He was the second oldest of 8 children and was known as a loner. His father was abusive, and Dale, like his mother, had been treated at least once at a psychiatric hospital. His mother at one point was hospitalized for trying to set their house on fire.
Oh, my.
Dale would end up moving. What'd you say?
I was just going to say, maybe it was for the insurance. Maybe it's not as bad as we think.
Maybe. I mean,
they were a poor family, right?
Definitely. We'll talk more about the poverty the conditions that he lived under in a minute. But Dale would end up moving to Greeley, Colorado, and often ran away and enjoyed the outdoors rather than going to school. So didn't pay much attention in school, which might explain the letter, using no periods, poor punctuation, and things like that.
Right.
At this time, he gets his first psychiatric evaluation and was held back a year in school and flagged for having serious emotional problems. An incident that occurred when he was 16 tells a story that he had likely been living in extreme poverty. When he was 16, he stole some vegetables from a neighbor's garden that he intended to sell to buy some shoes. So,
you gotta do what you got to do.
You're living in Colorado and you have no shoes at 16.
That is not good.
That's some tough living.
Yeah, it is.
When the neighbor confronted him, he stabbed her in the chest, pulled out a knife and stabbed her in the chest.
Jesus.
Yeah. Thankfully, she survived, and Dale would be promptly arrested and subsequently sent off to a boarding school where he actually was taught a useful trade. He was taught to learn he learned how to weld while at this boarding school, which gave him, a means to at least make a living for the rest of his life here and there. Although he was extraordinarily hard to work with and wasn't able to maintain an actual job at one location for that reason. So he would just do odd jobs, which is also typical serial killer behavior.
Yes. Yep. Always bouncing around. Always wanting to be in charge.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Not working well with others. So he was released from the boarding school when he was 19 and picked up work as a welder, doing odd jobs. Throughout the 1960s, he was arrested several times for minor offenses and parole violations. Then in the 1970s, he found God, got into religion, and helped to build the church. Things looked like they were turning around for old Dale.
Yeah, and that's it, guys. And that's how it ends up.
Yeah, that's the end of it. Yeah,
he got saved, and everything was all hunky dory. So we'll see you guys next week for a new.
I don't know what the whole ordeal with Lisa was. That was just, I guess.
Yep. Well, who cares? He's forgiven.
In his religion.
That's right. You can be forgiven for all. It's okay.
Yeah. So he gets his act together in the early 70s. It seems. Helps to build a church in 1970, and then in 1971 he gets married to a woman named Melody, and they have 3 children together. However, not surprisingly, the marriage was rocky. During the relationship, Dale moved into a friend's place after losing his job at one point, and during his stay at this friend's house, he allegedly almost choked the friend's daughter to death over pork being prepared differently.
Oh, likes his pork prepared a certain way, huh?
Yeah.
Yikes.
So you're seeing some extremely violent behavior out of nowhere,
Yes, you are.
And it sounds, though, from what I read, like the relationship with his wife was more abusive on her end. She would frequently hit him. From what I read, she would hit him and he wouldn't lash back and hit her. But maybe that's why he, fled to the friend's house. He didn't want to get locked up for hitting his wife or whatever. But
And maybe that's
they
why
would
he took
ultimately-
this out on other women as well.
Maybe. I mean, who also knows? I mean, maybe it was abusive back and forth. It's hard to believe he never, struck back at her. But,
Agreed. I don't believe that very much as well.
Yeah. So his wife would end up filing divorce several times throughout the 80s, and ultimately they would finalize a divorce in 1986. After the divorce, Dale lived on his uncle's plot of several acres in Moneta, Wyoming, which is where, the site of the killing would occur, and, holding Lisa Kimmel captive would be on that property.
Yep.
On that property, he would convert a 1950s bus into a living space. It had little more than a propane stove and a small bed. It had no power, no running water. So that's where he was living at the time.
Wow. He was a welder, though, so he probably could do some pretty cool shit to that bus.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen pictures of it. I mean, it doesn't look like a fun place to live, but...
Oh, well, I'm sure it wasn't in the, a 1950s bus. But, I mean, this is coming from a guy who would rather live outside, pretty much, right? I mean,
And
he's
grew up with no shoes, had to steal
Yeah.
vegetables to get shoes. So he's used to, an alternate lifestyle of rough living.
He's used to roughing it as long as he's in charge. He's in control.
You can almost smell the stench coming through your phone of this guy, his BO. He could definitely use some Oh My Guy. We'll talk more about that later.
Yes, we will.
So in 1988, during the summer, the uncle's son, so he lives on this uncle's property. The uncle had a son named Billy and also a daughter that came to live on the property with Dale. And during this time, he would produce a lot of stuff that couldn't be explained, which, also leads to believe that maybe he was a serial killer. I mean, a lot of this stuff may have been keepsakes from the murders that he had committed.
Okay, I was about to say, what do you mean by he produces a lot of stuff? You mean like just items?
Probably women's items, I would guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So people around him, family members, things like that, friends, like I don't imagine he had many friends. It sounds like he was, it was just family members, but
Right.
they would all point fingers like, yeah, like I remember he was driving through this area when this girl went missing. Like people that were close to him still like suspected he was a serial killer as well.
Ooh. That's
and like that's
damning.
one of these things. Like Uncle's son Billy is, he comes to the police later and says, like he did have a lot of weird stuff that couldn't be explained.
Yeah.
However, Billy accepted some of the items and didn't, ask too many questions about it.
Yeah. He had weird personal items. Yeah, if one of your friends has a bunch of like driver's license in a drawer, you might want to turn that motherfucker in.
For sure. Yeah, women's jewelry and underwear and driver's licenses. And,
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Passports, debit cards, yeah. Any of those things
Yeah.
might be a red flag.
Yeah. And so during this time, Dale spent his time doing odd jobs and scavenging. He became good at hunting and using a knife, and the lack of accommodations led him to develop bad hygiene, as we, discussed.
Right.
He never maintained a job for long because he didn't get along with his coworkers. And at the time that his DNA was linked in 2002, he was actually serving time in Englewood Federal Prison in Littleton, Colorado, on a weapons charge.
Perfect.
Upon being booked in, his DNA was placed in the CODIS database in 1997, and he was arrested on a separate charge. He had stopped to offer assistance. This is a crazy story. So, in 1997, he had stopped, to offer assistance to this family that was they were from California, and they were just traveling through. They were on their way, I believe, to Ohio to visit family. They were driving across the country, and their vehicle broke down, and unfortunately, right along Dale's path.
Oh,
And
shit.
so he pulls over. This is the Breeden family. It was, just a young couple, and they had a young baby as well. And their car had broken down. He offers assistance, but then kidnaps them at gunpoint.
Man, this is like a worse fear for a family, right? If your
Yeah.
family has car trouble traveling, this is like the absolute worst nightmare. This is like,
Yeah.
this
It's
is
like a
like why
movie. Yeah,
you're
it's
so
like
glad
Hills Have Eyes or
AAA
some shit.
exists. Yeah.
Yeah,
Really?
So I believe he had a van at the time. He pulled over and he offered them a ride to go get the part to fix their car or whatever it was. And he actually convinces, I believe he convinced either the wife or the husband to drive, and he got in the back seat. At which point he then put them at gunpoint. I think it was the husband was driving, and the wife was able to do something that knocked his gun on the floor of the van. It was a crazy fight ensues. They end up outside the van. The husband gets a hold of the gun and is beating him with the butt of the gun. Then he just won't go down though. Like they're beating the living shit out of Dale.
Yeah.
He's a big man. He's at this point, I looked up his prison, his current prison record. He's over 300 pounds currently, but at the time he was
Holy shit.
mid to high 200s, not very tall, but just a big, thick dude. And he was
Okay.
just taking a beating from the husband and the wife. And then at one point, he staggers back over to his vehicle and grabs like a pipe wrench and comes at him with that. At which point, the husband gets a hold of the pipe wrench and beats him with that as well.
Fuck yeah.
Then gets the gun and starts threatening to shoot him. Dale's still coming forward. He shoots at his feet. And ultimately, Dale finally gives up. And they're able to call the police and get him arrested.
Golly. I can't believe
Yeah.
they're able to have this whole fight like on the side of the road. Well, yeah,
Right.
but they drove away from the side of the road.
Yeah, I'm sure he had them drive off onto some side road or something where there wasn't traffic.
Right.
But that's like a movie scene, man. Insane.
It is. That's insane. I'm glad
His family was tough. Oh no! I forgot to mention before the fight really like went down hardcore. The husband was had enough wherewithal to take the baby and like hide him in some shrubbery. So the whole
Oh,
time they
wow.
were beating the brakes off this dude, the baby was off in the bushes, safe.
That's awesome.
Yes, and then they end up stealing his vehicle after they leave him on the side of the road, bloodied, and go to like a neighbor's house and call the cops.
Heck yeah. Fuck this dude, man. Stick together. You can beat the shit out of these people.
Right.
Like that's
It
why
was awesome.
just another case of why you
It's
always
just too
fight.
bad they didn't finish him off and shoot him right there on the side of the highway. They would have saved, later. Obviously, they couldn't know what was going to transpire. They didn't know that the police were going to basically suspend his 2 to 5 year sentence and only put him in a halfway house, which is what happens. And then he escapes the halfway house.
Yeah, but dude, if their names were Scott and Shannon Breeden, if one of them two shoots him, then they go to prison. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like for
unfortunately.
manslaughter or
Maybe,
some shit.
maybe not. I mean, I think there's a pretty good self-defense case, especially when they look into his record and see all the violent history. And then this is just some family traveling through from California, like with a baby. Like the odds
Yeah.
that they would intentionally shoot some dude on the side of the highway for no reason when they have a baby with them, and like this guy's got this violent record. Like,
No,
I hope
I
to think
agree.
that
It's
it would be a
just-
shut and closed like self-defense case, but
You would
who
think,
knows?
but this justice system, dude.
yeah,
Crazier shit has
You don't
happened.
want to get tied up in it. You
No.
always want to try to avoid being tied into the cogs of the justice system for
That's
sure.
right. You don't want your fate to be decided by that, if possible.
Yeah. So after the arrest for the kidnapping, he was given a 2 to 5 year suspended sentence and placed in a halfway house where he promptly escaped, but was later recaptured sleeping in his vehicle in the Shoshone National Forest. At that time, he had possessed a weapon in the vehicle as well, elevating his crime to the federal level. He was then incarcerated in federal prison where he was obliged to submit a DNA sample, and that would later come back to bite him in the ass, where he would be linked to Lisa Kimmel's murder. On September 3rd, 2001, while in prison, he would punch his prison cellmate, Carl Palmer, in the head. Carl would ultimately die from a ruptured vertebral artery. So this punch would end up killing his cellmate, and
my
he would end up being
gosh.
charged with manslaughter. That's the thing, man. You get into a fist fight, and sometimes like shit can happen. A person could fall and hit their head, or they can have a blood clot waiting to surface, or you just never
Yeah.
know.
You don't. You never know.
I mean, not that it fucking. I mean, it's obviously a good thing that it happened in this case, and that
Yeah,
it
fuck
kept
this
him
guy,
behind
but-
bars longer. But
But the
I don't
exact
know.
same thing could have happened in a bar. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for
Or
sure,
like
for
just a fight, a road rage fight, and then you're going to prison for manslaughter. It's crazy.
Yeah. Shortly after that is when the DNA was matched to Lisa's body in 2002. Meanwhile, Dale Eaton's next door neighbors reported to investigators once they heard, that his DNA had been linked. They reported to investigators that they had seen him digging a large hole on his property in Moneta around the time of Lisa's disappearance.
Oh no.
And so they started digging around on his property. They got search warrants, and the site was excavated in the summer of 2002, where they would find Lisa's entire car. First, they would start finding
That is
parts,
insane.
like a hubcap matching her car, and then they
Yeah.
actually unearthed the entire car, still bearing the distinctive Lil Miss license plate.
That is crazy. He buried
Yep.
a whole car.
Yep.
God, he must have had like a backhoe or some kind of equipment or something, right?
Yeah. He's got some heavy machinery to do something like that. You can't imagine
Jesus.
his
The pictures of
big
that
ass out there
car, man.
digging a hole by hand.
And that car was buried for a while because if you look at pictures of it being unearthed, I mean the dirt has turned to clay
Yeah.
inside
From
the car.
88 to 2002, that thing was underground.
Gosh, yeah.
14 years. It
It was
spent,
part of the
buried.
ground. Yeah. Oh, what a waste of a good car, though.
Still gets 50 miles to the gallon.
Still,
Honda
Can't kill
CRX.
they just pulled it out of there and just cranked up, and drove off.
Yeah, right.
Damn Hondas.
So Dale would be subsequently charged with 8 crimes connected to the Lisa Kimmel case, including first-degree premeditated murder, aggravated kidnapping, aggravated robbery, first-degree sexual assault, and second-degree sexual assault. And a fellow inmate named Joseph Dax testified that Dale confessed to him as follows, quote, Lisa had offered to give him a ride, and he accepted it. He then made sexual advances during the ride, which Kimmel did not appreciate, so she pulled over to let him out of the car. The situation then escalated to kidnapping, rape, and murder.
Why would you give a man a ride if you are a lonely young girl?
Maybe she was just that type of person. She was trusting and, just...
Man, I guess.
Who knows what kind of persona Dale put on? Like maybe he really put on a sob story or whatever.
He's 250 pounds, Lauren. I
understand,
don't know, man.
Maybe I don't know.
These guys.
That's maybe that's what happened. Maybe I've also heard tales of him. Her car breaking down, which I find unlikely. It was a brand new car.
Yeah.
Or maybe she stops at a gas station and somehow he sneaks up on her, puts her at gunpoint, makes him get. I heard that there was a possibility that he had a tow truck that he was driving at the time, and he got her into his truck and towed her car behind. I'd find it less. I think he was out walking around, and she what the tale that the inmate says somehow he was able to talk her into giving him a ride, something like that.
Yeah. Well, these guys are sociopaths, man. They know how to seem harmless.
Yeah,
they do. We've seen it over and over again.
Yeah. So Lisa had, in fact, it seems, been held at his property for somewhere around 6 days before he ultimately killed her on that bridge and threw her body off the bridge. So Dale Eaton would be found guilty of all charges and sentenced to death on March 20th, 2004. Unfortunately, much like many of the cases we cover, when someone gets sentenced to death, they end up getting a bunch of appeals. They're on and off of death row, and that's basically the case with this. He was for a long time the only inmate on death row in Montana for years, and he's actually currently not on death row anymore. It's still an ongoing thing. As of September 2021 was the latest information I heard, in which a Colorado psychiatrist is still speaking at a hearing, looking into claims of inadequate defense, and says he may suffer from bipolar disorder.
So
they're still fighting to get him back on death row, and his defense is fighting to keep him off of death row. And it's at this point he's 70-something years old.
He's probably just going to die.
Just let
in
him die behind bars. That's not a way to waste a bunch more tax dollars to get the last say and kill the guy or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just leave him. Let him rot. He's almost done.
He'll die soon anyway. He's 300 pounds and he's in his 70s. Something's going to get him.
Right.
So the sightings of Lisa Marie Kimmel were never explained. All the sightings of her car being driven around. Lisa's parents would ultimately be awarded Dale Eaton's property in a civil lawsuit, and which they burned down the buildings to the ground. So they get a little bit of revenge on the property that their daughter was kept at.
Dang.
Over the years, profilers and experts close to the case have said that the degree of criminal sophistication displayed by Dale Eaton in disposing of Kimmel's body and the removal of evidence, including a binding, only raises the possibility that he was a serial killer.
Oh, no doubt.
Burial of Kimmel's car, but not her body, baffles Dr. Robert Keppel, who led the investigation into Ted Bundy. We've heard about old Keppel.
Yeah.
Keppel has written several books on serial killings. He makes a good point. He says, quote, why the killer even dump her body over that bridge? Why wouldn't the killer just bury her in the car? Yeah, I don't understand that, right? You bury the car and actually, kept that evidence disguised for 14 years until DNA, and had he buried her body with the car, the DNA that linked him to her never would have been discovered. They discovered, the DNA from, his DNA on her body, which he dumped off the bridge.
Now, the only thing I can think is that maybe he kept the car, right? Drove it around a little bit, but why the fuck would you not take those vanity plates off? I just don't get that. Why would you not swap them out with something else? Why would you drive the car and still bury the car with these very distinct vanity plates?
But let's say he wanted to drive the car around longer, and that's why it still doesn't make sense why he wouldn't just bury her at the property, keep driving the car, and then ultimately bury the car as well.
I see what you're saying.
Dumping her body off the bridge makes no sense if you're trying to get away with this crime. That's just leaving the evidence to be discovered. Maybe he was hoping the river would take her body a lot further than it did. It only took it a quarter mile. Maybe he was hoping it would take her to a totally different state and just completely muddy up things and get her body far away from his property.
Right. And it is also believed that, water destroys all evidence. That's also believed. And then also, it's kind of hard to get rid of a car any other way. It's like, what do you do with that car? You can't really take it to a scrapyard. You can't
And also, like we mentioned earlier, DNA too. Like he probably wasn't too keen on DNA at this time, being the late 80s.
That's what I'm saying. And anything he knew about DNA or anything left behind, he probably thought it was going to be destroyed on her body by the river.
Yeah.
And then if the car's underground, I mean, that's probably, I don't know. I really can't think of a safer place to hide a car. But I get what you're saying, though. Why not, if you're going to go through all that trouble of digging the hole, why not just put her in it as well? I see what you're saying.
Right.
But
So Greg Cooper.
I was just going to say, the only bad thing about that is that if, he did get in trouble because of his neighbors seeing him bury the car. So if she's in the car as well, then it's just cut and dry. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's already cut and dry because they found the car, but
the one argument I can say, if he's really thinking this thing out, is maybe like hoping the river would take the body into like another state, super far away, and just like put a much bigger distance between his property and the body, and the disappearance of Lisa. Lisa was driving through his little town when she went missing. So maybe ultimately they start digging into, what criminals live in the area, and ultimately they get a search warrant for his property. Maybe that's where he was, thinking. And if I get this body far away from me and my town and my property, that'll take the investigation elsewhere. Maybe that's what he was thinking, but who knows?
Right.
So Greg Cooper, a former FBI profiler who investigated Kimmel's murder in association with a series of other killings from 1983 to 1997 in the 4-state region, as we mentioned, the Great Basin murders, told the Denver Channel that the car could have been the killer's trophy as well. So maybe he stated that the killer might have become aroused just by walking over the area where the car was buried, and also said that Kimmel was probably murdered by, quote, a very organized serial killer. So let's go through some of these other unsolved murders that occurred in the Great Basin area, attributed to the Great Basin serial killer, who is believed by many to be Dale Eaton. So on August 6, 1981, Belinda Mae Grantham, age 20, was found in the North Platte River, the same river that Lisa Kimmel's body was found, near a bridge, very similar to Lisa as well, in Glen Rock, Converse County, Wyoming. She had a rope tied around her neck, weighted to a rock. She had been strangled, and she was last seen alive at the Natrona County Fair in Casper, Wyoming. Casper being near.
Yep.
That was right in Dale's stomping grounds. It was. And seems to fit. He dumps the body in the same river, off a bridge potentially. Same MO. Definitely seems to line up. And this is 1981. Dale was in the area at the time. Mm-hmm. Then in September of 1982, Naomi Lee Kidder was a young woman whose remains were found in Natrona County, Wyoming in September of 1982. She was identified in March 1993 through dental records and was possibly a victim of another killer, Larry Hall, who was in possession of a document bearing the victim's name. So it's likely that this one was not Dale, but it's still not out of the realm of possibility, but it's most likely Larry Hall.
Yeah, man, Larry Hall. He was the devil with mutton chops.
We've done that case.
Yes. Yep. In with the devil with mutton chops or something like that. We called it. That is a crazy case, man. Crazy case.
It is.
Lots.
You may be able to add Naomi Kidder to that list, but it's yet to be officially determined that he was responsible for Naomi Kidder. But it also could have been this week's case, Dale. So who knows?
It would be interesting to see if we mention that in that case. I have to go back and give that a listen.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Meanwhile, in March of 1983, in Fremont County, Wyoming, Janelle Johnson was found with legs protruding from a makeshift grave. She had been buried, but storm runoff had eroded away part of the grave. She had been raped, and bite marks were on her left shoulder. Unfortunately, in that case, semen DNA was lost when the refrigerator was left unplugged at a police lockup, and the DNA it spoiled and went bad.
Oh, my.
So that one's not going to be able to be linked, unfortunately, to Dale Eaton if his DNA matched or not. That would have been an easy way, if you had that DNA still, but we see that happen so often where evidence is either lost or destroyed accidentally or whatever.
That is so sketch. It's like, what else was in that refrigerator?
Mm-hmm. I know, right? How many other semen samples or saliva samples and whatever?
Yep. That's what I wonder. Somebody inside didn't want something to be tested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then on July 24th, 1997, Amy Betchel, a 24-year-old female, went missing while going out for a run to train for a 10K race. She was last known to be seen in the Wild River Mountains, approximately 15 miles south of Lander, Wyoming. and was declared dead in absentia by her husband in 2004, and this case remains unsolved. And according to Dale's brother, he had been near the area where Betchel disappeared at the time of her disappearance. However, Eaton has refused to discuss the case. He still denies his involvement in Lisa Kimball's murder as well. He's just basically deny, and rotting away in prison, thankfully. But yeah, still doesn't have the humanity in him to at least admit to the crime that is 100% sure that he did, let alone any other crimes that he most likely committed. This dude killed more than once. There's no way this was his only murder.
No way, man. But we see that so often with so many of these serial killers, man. They get in there and they hold that information. It's just something they'll die with. They get off on that shit.
He was brash enough to abduct at gunpoint a family with a baby on the side of the road. Like,
come on, guys.
This dude acted as though there was, he had no fear of being caught. He was brash in his crime. Like, I know this dude killed more, and it's possible these victims that we just read off were, ones that he's responsible for. But I don't know that we'll ever know unless they're able to, like, if they don't have DNA to link to him, he's not going to talk. So,
right.
Fortunately, there's probably not going to be closure on those.
Nope. Too bad people couldn't identify him from his smell, huh? Right? Just have people be like, there was a certain odor on the crime scene. Because I know he didn't have no Oh My Gaia to cover that shit up.
Nope. Oh My Gaia.
Oh My Gaia, guys. It's an innovative, all-natural deodorant, fragrance, and beard oil company specializing in paraben and aluminum-free products. Their innovative line of deodorants inhibit the growth of odor-causing bacteria while maintaining effectiveness. At Oh My Gaia, they use only all-natural, paraben, and aluminum-free organic ingredients. And guys, there's tons of scents to choose from vanilla to cherry almond, sandalwood, lavender, lemongrass, Egyptian musk, coconut, dreamsicle, leather, lumberjack, honeysuckle, fireside, bergamot, amber, pear, sweet pea, sailor, barbershop. Man, what we have our very own scent called True Crime Pine, and new scents are being added all the time. Wendy is always trying to keep the store fresh, so always check back at ohmygaia.com. And because you guys are True Crime Guys listeners, you can use the word creeper for 15% off your order. That's CREEPER for 15% off at shop_ohmygaia on Instagram or ohmygaia.com. That's OHMYGAIA.com. Guys, you won't regret it, and you won't find a better natural deodorant. Guaranteed. Guaranteed.
Right on.
All right.
Let's take a moment to give everybody a shout out not everybody, but give some of the people that, because it's hard to, sometimes I miss reviews because there's so many different platforms and, not all of them get pulled into one location, but let's give a shout out to some of you who have gone and rated and reviewed the show and taken time to do that. I want to thank Pink Rose 528 in the US. Said, amazing, 5 stars, awesome podcast, love listening to you all. Note to the 153 episode in Maryland, our DMV is called the MVA, Motor Vehicle Administration, and DMV stands for the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area, which really confused me when I first visited other states.
Well, it stands for that with you, but I mean...
DMV, DC, Maryland, and Virginia, the DMV, that's what that, wow.
I mean, for that area, I guess it stands for that, but for the rest of the country, it stands for Department of Motor Vehicles.
Okay. Now I'm just even more confused. But nonetheless, thanks, Pink Rose.
Right.
Then we got Grove, Texas, in the United States. Says, good stuff. This is a good listen. Compassion for victims and laughing/making fun of the perpetrators keeps the pod from being so dark. Keep up the good work.
Right on, thanks.
Thank you. And then we got Dami JB 21 in Great Britain. Said, absolutely love these dudes. The True Crime Guys is a podcast I can't stop listening to. Absolutely love the dynamic and the banter between the two hosts. The intro song is absolutely slaps, and the cases are thoroughly researched. Indeed, they are making murder charming.
Smashing, lads. Smashing.
Thank you. I've got a few shout outs that people have been messaging us. Let's see.
Okay. Gotta get those too. Those are important.
Yeah. We got Michael Steven in San Antonio, Texas. Says, got everything square. Thanks for the super dope podcast. Listen to y'all every day, and I'm pretty much caught up on all the freeloader stuff. Can't get enough, so I'm about to hop on Patreon and subscribe.
Yes.
Hope this counts as a review.
Right on.
That's Discount Drake on Twitter, but his name is Steven from San Antonio, Texas.
Right
so shout out to Steven. Thank you.
Join the creeper party, Steven.
Support. Yep.
Right. What else we got, man?
I don't know. You got anything?
I don't. I think you've covered all the new reviews for right now. Guys, if you haven't had a chance to review or subscribe on wherever you listen, please do. It helps the show a lot. We noticed in the last week, we're featured on the top 200 true crime podcasts on Apple. So in order to stay there, guys, all we need is subscribers and reviews. That helps the podcast a ton. We really appreciate that very much. Yeah. Any help? And then obviously, if you're all caught up on true crime, guys, you already left a review, go check us out on Patreon. Patreon.com/True Crime Guys. There's a link right below the description to True Crime Guys link tree, and you can see all of the things under True Crime Guys Productions, and links to our Patreon, our Spotify pages, our other shows. Everything you would like to hear is right there in one place. But like on Patreon, for instance, I think one of the greatest perks about Patreon is you get to know us a little bit better. Every Friday, we do a show called Just the Banter, and we answer patron questions, would you rathers, or just read your comments and react to them every single Friday on Patreon. Just the Banter, it usually ends up being I'd say anywhere between 30 minutes and an hour, Lauren, depending on how many
so it
questions.
usually falls around 40 minutes-ish.
Yeah. So we have a good time. It's a good way to get to know us a little better, get to see, some different sides of us as hosts, and we get to learn a little bit more about our listener base. So again, that's patreon.com/True Crime Guys. And if you guys are caught up on all True Crime Guys stuff, check out our other show, Strange and Unexplained. Wherever you listen, new episodes come out on Mondays. And of course, there's a Patreon for that show as well, patreon.com/S&U podcast. So tons of shit under True Crime Guys Productions. And we also have another show, Full House Fantasy Football. It's completely different from crime, but we know that a lot of you are football fans. And if you're fantasy fans as well, definitely got to check this show out.
And we will be making our valiant return this week. Tori was sick, and we weren't able to record last week, but we're going to get back on the wagon this week and catch up on what's been going on in the fantasy football world and get you ready for the playoffs if you are one of the lucky ones that are making it into the playoffs in fantasy football. So
that's right, coming down to the crunch.
Yep. All right. Does that about do it? We hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We will see you for another Freeloader episode next week.
We will.
And have a great week. Keep creeping.
Keep creeping, guys.
True crime guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you, sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army, we out here making murder, get murder, get murder. True crime guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you, sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army, we out here making murder charming.